bold bet on young students.
Marketplace Morning Report is produced in association with the University of Southern California.
From APM in New York, I'm David Brancaccio. One Ohio county wants more students going to college, and it's putting its money where its mouth is. It's setting aside $100 for every one of its kindergarten kids. The multi-million-dollar program is the largest of its kind in the country. From the Marketplace Education Desk at WYPR, Amy Scott reports.
When it comes to producing college graduates, the Cleveland area trails the rest of the country. Cuyahoga County Executive Ed Fitzgerald says the area also has higher than average poverty.
And those things are not unrelated. So we felt we needed to do something dramatic to try to create a real culture of college attendance.
Research shows a college savings account can actually change a family's aspirations. William Elliott is an assistant professor at the University of Kansas. He found that students with savings are about 4 times more likely to go to college. When that savings account is in their own name, they're almost 7 times more likely.
They tend to have a better sense of control over things, and it helps them engage in school more because they see college then as being open.
That first $100 won't cover much tuition, but if parents contribute $5 or $10 a week, it could add up to thousands by graduation. And Elliott says even a very small nest egg increases motivation. I'm Amy Scott for Marketplace.
A disease infecting most ash trees in Denmark is now in Britain. Large portions of British woodlands are in jeopardy, and the environmental and financial consequences could be dire. Marketplace's Stephen Beard reports from Horncastle, England.
Like the rustling in the undergrowth of an English wood, the first lawsuit of the crisis is stirring. Simon Ellis, a commercial tree farmer, is suing the government over its ban on the movement of ash trees.
We invest in these crops during the summer months and harvest at this time of year, and by imposing the restrictions they've put on us now, that's stopped our income stream before it's even started.
A third of Britain's woodland is at risk. The cost to landowners and tree growers could run into the tens of millions. Simon Ellis blames the government for failing 3 years ago to take heed of the ash tree epidemic in Denmark. Tim Briarcliff speaks for commercial tree growers in Britain.
We wrote to the government and said, we've seen this terrible disease in Denmark and you need to ban imports now to stop the disease coming into the UK.
That was in 2009. The government finally imposed its import ban 2 weeks ago.
So here we are today with the disease in the country.
The government says there was no scientific evidence 3 years ago that the disease was in Britain, and so under EU trade rules, ash imports could not be banned then. Environment Minister Rupert Ponsonby.
The first confirmed finding in the country was in March of this year, and since then we have taken action to put in place a ban on movements and imports.
Too little, too late, say the critics, as the disease spreads like wildfire across Britain. Now the race is on in plant laboratories to find a cure. Environmental campaigner George Monbiot is not optimistic about the future of one of Britain's best-loved trees.
It is too late. It's going to destroy the majority of Britain's ash trees. That seems absolutely clear. We're losing a part of ourselves as well as a part of the natural world.
The cost may run into millions, the loss to the landscape incalculable. In rural England, I'm Stephen Beard for Marketplace.
You've heard of remittances. Immigrants make money in the new country and send some of it back to family back home. It's big money, but it's informal. Enter something called diaspora bonds. Dan Leinervoss teaches sociology at the University of Southern California and has written a book about this. Welcome to Marketplace, Professor.
Thank you.
So help me understand this. Say I'm from, Italy, and I make it big in the United States, but I still love Italy and want some of my cash to help the old country. I could send the money directly to my uncle Salvio in Torre del Greco, or I could do what?
Well, in some cases, you can buy diaspora bonds, which are basically a type of security that governments offer to members of the nation that live abroad as a way of getting more money than they can possibly get through philanthropy or regular financial markets.
How would it work? A country issues the bond, you pay for it, and you get an interest payment?
Well, if all goes well, let's say 12 or 15 years later, you get your principal and interest.
And of course, there's going to be risk depending on the country.
Typically, like diaspora bonds will carry considerable risk. Otherwise, there wouldn't be no point in issuing those bonds. Governments usually do that because they don't have access to regular financial markets, precisely because it's so risky.
What might the foreign country do with the money that you've invested? Anything, or is it targeted towards specific projects?
Well, the advantage of diaspora bonds from the perspective of the issuing country is that, first, it goes to the state, so it can be used to fund large infrastructure projects. In general, in comparison with philanthropy, it's relatively free of strings, and that's one of the things that are attractive about it.
It was pointed out in a piece I read in The Economist that one challenge to this idea is people will have very direct experiences about whether or not the home government is worthy of trust or not. And this is something that requires trust because you're handing over money for years.
Right. And the trust is also something that is built over time. In the Irish case that I studied, many Irish Americans were willing to trust their government, but there were all kinds of misorganizations in the process of issuing the bonds and sending them to the subscribers, such that a year later, when they tried to do it again, they couldn't find enough organizers that would risk their good name by selling these bonds.
USC's Dan Leiner-Voss is author of a book about diaspora bonds as used by Irish Americans and Jewish Americans. It's called Sinews of the Nation. Professor, thank you.
Thank you very much.
We really appreciate hearing from you. You can follow us on Twitter at Marketplace APM. Like us on Facebook if you like. And there's plenty of material to explore about how money plays out in our lives at marketplace.org. In New York, I'm David Brancaccio. This is the Marketplace Morning Report. From APM, American Public Media.